You think you like solitude because people are exhausting. That is not the real reason, and if you miss the real reason, you will keep misreading your own mind and accidentally designing a life that drains you. Quick thing while this is fresh. We are building toward 10,000 subscribers, and your subscription genuinely helps us reach people who actually want psychology that goes beyond the usual cliches. And if this hits a nerve, tap like too, because it tells the algorithm this is worth showing to someone who is quietly dealing with the same thing. Now let us name the experience without sugarcoating it. As you get sharper, as your thinking gets more precise, you start preferring fewer conversations. You start leaving events earlier. You start feeling relief when plans cancel. And then you wonder if something is wrong with you. Yeah, because you can still love people and still want less of them. Here is what I have observed, and what the research keeps pointing toward in different languages. Solitude starts feeling better because your brain becomes more sensitive to low-quality information, and social life is, statistically, a low-quality information environment, not morally low quality, informationally noisy. And once your brain crosses a certain threshold of sensitivity, the noise is not neutral anymore. It becomes costly, mentally, emotionally, even physically. So the question is not, why am I becoming antisocial? The question is, why does my nervous system treat most social interaction like cognitive pollution? Think about this for a second. If I put you in a room with a faint, constant, high-pitched sound, some people will not notice it. Some people will notice it and tolerate it, and some people will go slightly insane. The sound did not change. Sensitivity did. That is the first mechanism. As you get smarter, your signal-to-noise detector improves. And it does not just improve for math problems. It improves for people. When someone talks, they are not only transmitting facts, they are transmitting motives, status moves, self-protection, half-beliefs, contradictions they have never examined, and little social tests to see whether you will validate them. Most people call that normal conversation. A more intelligent mind starts treating it like a messy data set. And this is where it gets interesting. The smarter you are, the more you automatically compress information. Your brain tries to summarize, model, predict. That is what intelligence is, in a computational sense. It is efficient prediction under uncertainty. But many conversations are not built for prediction. They are built for affiliation. The goal is not accuracy, it is belonging. So you walk into a social space with a brain optimized for truth compression, and you are surrounded by speech optimized for social glue. Different objectives, same language, immediate friction. You have felt this when someone tells a story that is obviously missing key details, but everyone politely nods. If you ask one clarifying question, you become intense. If you point out a contradiction, you become negative. You are not being negative. You are being accuracy-seeking in a room that is consensus-seeking. And here is the cost that most people never articulate. To fit in, you have to deliberately lower your resolution. You have to blur your perception on purpose. That is not just tiring. It is identity-threatening. Because when you repeatedly act below your own cognitive standards, your brain flags it as self-betrayal. Not dramatic betrayal, micro-betrayal, the kind that accumulates as a low-grade internal disgust. So solitude starts feeling like relief, because in solitude you do not have to pretend that low-resolution thinking is acceptable. You get to think at full resolution again. Now I want to add a second layer, because this is not only about intelligence, it is about metacognition. The more you can observe your own mind, the less you tolerate environments that hijack it. A lot of social interaction runs on what I call attentional coercion, not explicit coercion, subtle coercion. Someone is bored, so they throw a topic into the room. Someone is anxious, so they start gossiping. Someone needs reassurance, so they fish for compliments. And if you do not join, you are framed as cold. But notice what is happening. Your attention is being recruited to regulate someone else's emotional state. You become a nervous system assistant. Your job is to co-regulate them. For most people, that is fine, because they are doing it to each other all day long. It is the social contract. But as you get smarter and more self-aware, you notice the transaction. You notice the hidden ask underneath the words. And once you notice it, it becomes expensive to ignore, because ignoring it means either you comply or you refuse. Compliance costs energy. Refusal costs social friction. Either way, now you pay. Solitude feels better because it is the only environment where your attention truly belongs to you. Let me show you what I mean with a simple example. You are talking to someone and they say, "We should totally hang out sometime." If you are socially naive, you take it as a plan. If you are socially experienced, you take it as a polite signal. If you are highly intelligent and attentive, you also model the incentive structure. They get to feel like a good person without committing. The phrase is not about the future, it is about identity management in the present. Now imagine doing that model in 10 times in one dinner. Your brain is running background processes the entire time. You are not just listening, you are parsing subtext, tracking inconsistencies, predicting outcomes, regulating your responses to avoid unnecessary conflict. That is why you can come home from a fun social night and feel like you ran a marathon. You were not relaxing, you were computing. Here is the micro hook. If you have ever felt lonely in a room full of people, the next part will explain the exact mechanism of that loneliness, and it is not what most people think. The usual explanation is, you did not find your tribe. Sometimes true. But the deeper mechanism is that loneliness is not the absence of people. It is the absence of shared reality. A smart mind is constantly constructing a model of reality. When you talk to someone, you are basically trying to sync models. Not agree on everything, but overlap enough that communication feels real. In many social environments, the shared model is not reality. It is a socially convenient simulation. People will agree to things they do not believe, laugh at jokes they do not find funny, and pretend not to notice obvious dysfunction. It keeps the peace. If you are less sensitive, you can live inside that simulation and it feels fine. If you are more sensitive, your brain keeps detecting mismatches, little glitches. You say something literal, they respond emotionally. You make a precise point, they hear a status threat. You ask for definitions, they accuse you of overthinking. That mismatch produces a specific kind of loneliness. You are present, but unsynced. And here is the part that is slightly uncomfortable. As you get smarter, your threshold for real goes up. You are harder to sync with, not because you are superior, but because your model has more parameters, more nuance, and more conditional thinking. A simple mind can be satisfied with a simple shared story. A complex mind often cannot, because it sees the missing pieces. So solitude feels better because it is the only place you do not have to negotiate reality. You just live in it. Now, third mechanism, and this one is the one people almost never talk about. Intelligence increases your sensitivity to social incentive gradients. Basically, you start seeing the game behind the conversation. Game theory sounds abstract, but it shows up in normal life like this. People do not only communicate to exchange information, they communicate to position themselves, to test loyalty, to protect rank, to avoid shame, to signal values without paying costs. The smarter you are, the more you notice when speech is performative rather than descriptive. And once you notice that, A lot of social life starts feeling like a meeting when nobody is allowed to say what the meeting is actually about. You have seen this at work. Everyone talks about alignment and team culture, but the real issue is that two people are competing for influence. Or in families, everyone talks about being respectful, but the real issue is that one person cannot tolerate not being in control. A sharp mind sees the hidden objective function. Now here is the twist. When you see the game, you cannot unsee it. And you have two choices. You can play the game better, or you can exit the game. For some intelligent people, the response is to become socially strategic. They become very good at managing impressions, very good at saying the right thing. That can work, but it comes with a psychological side effect. You start feeling like a tool, and even when you are winning. For other intelligent people, the response is solitude, not because they hate people, but because they hate games disguised as honesty. Solitude feels better because it is game-free, no signaling, no impression management, no rank negotiation, just you and reality. Now stay with me, because this next part recontextualizes everything I have said so far. There is a deeper layer beneath noise and games, and once you see it, you will understand why solitude can feel almost addictive as your intelligence grows. The deeper layer is this: as your cognitive ability increases, your opportunity cost increases. Every hour you spend is an investment, not in a motivational poster way, in a literal neurological way. When you are more intelligent, you can do more with an hour of uninterrupted time. You can build models, learn systems, write, design, solve problems, integrate your experiences. Your brain has higher throughput, so the cost of a low-return social interaction is not only the interaction itself, it is the displacement of high-return solitude. This is why people who are smart often become extremely protective of their mornings, or their evenings, or any block of time where they can enter deep work or deep thought. It is not just preference, it is economics. Your brain learns through reinforcement that solitude produces compound interest, and social time often does not, especially if the social time is repetitive, shallow, or emotionally dysregulating. But do not oversimplify this into social bad, solitude good. That is not the point. The point is that your brain starts sorting social interactions the way an investor sorts opportunities. High yield, low yield. High yield interactions feel energizing. You exchange real ideas, you feel seen, you leave clearer than you arrived. Low yield interactions feel depleting. You perform, you nod, you manage, you leave fragmented. Intelligence makes that sorting system harsher and faster. Here is another micro hook. If you have ever wondered why small talk feels almost physically painful now, the mechanism is not snobbery. It is prediction error fatigue. Your brain is a prediction machine. When conversation follows familiar patterns, your brain can predict it and relax. But in small talk, the content is low value, while the social risk is still present. You still have to monitor tone, timing, facial expression, turn-taking. High monitoring cost, low informational payoff. That combination creates fatigue. Not because you hate people, but because your brain hates inefficient protocols. It is like using a slow internet connection for something that does not even matter. The lag alone makes you angry because the reward does not justify the waiting. So when you are alone, your brain finally gets to run in a high bandwidth mode. You can pursue a thought all the way to the end without interruption. You can let your attention settle instead of being constantly redirected. And this is where many smart people get confused. They think solitude is making them colder. But often it is doing the opposite. It is restoring their capacity for warmth. because chronic social overexposure can create a defensive personality. You become blunt, impatient, avoidant, not because you are inherently that way, but because your nervous system is trying to reduce load. Solitude reduces load, and when load drops, empathy can come back online. Now I want to unify all of this into a single framework you can actually use, because if you do not have a framework, you will either isolate too much and call it peace, or you will socialize too much and call it normal, and both will quietly damage you. Here is the model. As intelligence increases, you shift from socializing for stimulation to socializing for calibration. Most people use people to regulate boredom and mood. They seek stimulation. They seek distraction. They seek emotional smoothing. A smarter, more self-directed mind does not need as much external stimulation. It can generate its own, so it stops needing people for entertainment. What it still needs, sometimes desperately, is calibration, reality checking, value refinement, seeing your blind spots, stress testing your ideas, and feeling human in a way that does not require self-betrayal. So the question becomes, are your relationships calibrated, or are they merely stimulating? Calibrated relationships have a few signatures. First, you can speak in higher resolution without being punished for it. Second, disagreement does not threaten the bond. Third, you feel more like yourself after the interaction, not less. Fourth, there is low performative pressure. You do not have to manage your identity every second. If your social circle is mostly uncalibrated, solitude will feel like intelligence itself, like sanity. And if you find calibrated relationships, something surprising happens. Solitude still feels good, but it stops feeling like escape. It becomes choice. Now let me make this even more practical with a simple filter you can run in real time. I call it the 3 returns. After any interaction, ask yourself 3 questions. Did I get informational return? Meaning, did I learn something real or refine a model? Did I get emotional return? Meaning, did I feel safer, clearer, more regulated? Did I get identity return? Meaning, did I feel more aligned with who I am, or did I perform a version of myself to keep the peace? If you consistently get at least 2 out of 3, that is a high-yield relationship. If you consistently get 0 or 1, your preference for solitude is not a flaw. It is accurate feedback. And here is the last piece that makes this whole topic slightly dangerous, so I want to say it cleanly. Intelligence can make solitude feel better for a healthy reason and for an unhealthy reason. Healthy solitude is where you integrate. Unhealthy solitude is where you avoid. The difference is not whether you are alone. The difference is whether solitude expands your life or shrinks it. If you use solitude to think more clearly, create, recover, and then re-enter the world with intention, that is strength. If you use solitude to never be challenged, never be known, never risk friction, that is fear wearing the mask of insight. Smart people are especially vulnerable to that second form because they can rationalize it beautifully. They can build an airtight argument for why everyone is annoying, why society is fake, why it is better alone. And sometimes they are not wrong, but being not wrong is not the same as being free. So here is the loop back to the first sentence. You think you like solitude because people are exhausting. The deeper truth is that your mind has developed higher standards for reality, for efficiency, and for self-consistency. Solitude meets those standards by default. Most social environments do not. Your job is not to become more social. Your job is to become more selective and to stop pathologizing your own accuracy. Notice the pattern this week. Notice which interactions leave you more synchronized with reality and which ones feel like you just spent 2 hours inside a simulation. And if this changed how you see your own preference for being alone, I would genuinely like to hear what you have noticed in the comments. because the final question is not whether solitude is better. The final question is this: are you choosing solitude because you have outgrown noise, or because you are afraid of being seen at full resolution?